A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the evening review. My name is Taiwo Jebela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Evilastus Kaaronda. He is president of Swanu. And over the weekend, Mr. Kaaronda launched his party's manifesto in Gobabis. But in an interesting twist of things, while he was in Gobabis launching that document, very important document, there were other party members who convened in Windhoek for what they called an extraordinary congress. So we called in Mr. Kaaronda to help us explain and contextualize these contradictions ahead of the elections. Mr. Kaaronda, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's first talk about the manifesto because we've been yearning for manifestos from different political parties, not only yours. What is different in the Swanu manifesto?
Look, the problems that we've experienced ever since independence, and particularly the last 4 or 5 years, have not really changed. What has happened is they've just intensified. They are more pronounced now than they have been. Unemployment, for instance, affects more than 60% of our young people, and it still hovers around 48%. That's how high it is. You have seen the problem of rural-urban migration, because people in rural areas also no longer have the means to sustain themselves while there. So the manifesto talks about unemployment. It also talks about the problem of rural Namibia, the problem of migration, the question of housing, health, public health, education. We have also delved into restorative justice, this thing called reparations. We've looked at quite a number of areas, but of paramount importance, I think, is the question of how do we create employment? What needs to be done to absorb many of our young people into the labor market? And the attendant, I think, problem to that is the one of underemployment. Those of our young people who have jobs today, whether employed through ShopRite or in the fishing industry or Vurman and Brock or wherever it is, they are mostly employed through a third party called labor hire. So the whole question of labor hire also becomes important, because it doesn't help you create these jobs and people's salaries are taken away by these labor hire companies before they actually reach the intended recipient. So that's another aspect that we feel we would also need to address. Education, for instance, there's an interesting aspect where we feel, for instance, that and we take the example of a geologist, for instance, or geology. We are a mining economy, but when you go to primary school, secondary school, you don't learn anything about geology or about mining. So the question is, why do we have to wait until university for a person to be introduced to geology or even obtain a first degree in geology? Why don't we polish our people right through this whole school period? It's 12 years, give or take. And when they want to specialize, they can go to university and do a master's, a 2-year master's degree, and specialize, instead of doing nothing throughout the whole 12 months of schooling, and then go and do a 4-year degree, as your undergraduate degree in geology, and then maybe do a master's, so on. But it's a mining economy. Why would you want to teach somebody about, say, the anatomy of a fly or a mosquito? What do I do with it after school? So there must be some relevance to what we teach our people and prepare them, for the labor market, but also assist them to appreciate the wealth they have if you teach me about geology and the wealth that Namibia possesses, I might actually turn out to be a very good citizen because I would appreciate these things and help preserve them. Same is true for fisheries. Why not teach people about marine resources while in school and not wait until university?
Yeah.
In any case, university is too expensive. Most of our people can't even afford it. So why not just focus on those things that are important and that are relevant to our economy and industry right now while at school, and leave the rest, of the things out. Like there's a lot of focus on religion or religious studies, but to what end? So those are some of the things that we feel would need to be, looked at in order for us to move the country forward. Unemployment, as I earlier on alluded to, is a product of just bad economics, really. A country that exports almost 80% of what it extracts from the earth to the rest of the world invariably sends or exports job opportunities also to those countries where our natural resources go to in raw form. That's why we believe in beneficiation or value addition.
Yeah.
Now, if you add value, if you stop the extraction and exportation of our raw materials and add value here, put up factories here, you are likely to absorb a huge number of our young people into these employment opportunities that this thing creates. Omaheke region, for instance, it's known as the cattle country. That's what they call it. Now ask yourself, a cattle country, do you see a tannery anywhere in Omaheke? What do they do with the skins of these animals that they slaughter or that they export or send out from the Omaheke region? Why don't they have a huge factory there to produce leather and leather products? We drive Mercedes-Benzes, we drive Toyotas, we drive all sorts of cars, Mahindras and so on. Now, if government procures Mercedes-Benz, why can't government also, as a condition to those guys who produce Mercedes-Benz, say, well, we will procure these cars from you exclusively, but in return, you must buy or source your leather products from us. You see? Now, with leather products, in a region like Omaheke, you wouldn't be talking about 800 people dead because of hunger.
Yeah.
You see, because you would have dealt with the question of hunger by providing people with employment. You see, so there are certain things that I feel we possess, but for some reason we just don't use them. You see, resource allocation, for instance, of fisheries. Instead of allowing a minister and his cronies in cabinet to give each other fishing quotas, because that's what the rules permit, why don't you force the minister to give fishing quotas to development committees of regions instead of to individuals? Because what you do with that is you open the door for corruption. I mean, if I allocate fishing quotas to my friends, I am bound to be tempted to be, use this thing as in the wrong way and end up like our comrade in, Bernard Sau. So avoid that, close the door, focus resources, to development, and where regions have resources like, the Karas region, for instance. I mean, you wouldn't see, or you wouldn't think Karas actually is a region that produces diamonds. You go there, you look at the poverty in Karas, you look at the glittering palaces and tall buildings in Windhoek, and then you say, but how can Windhoek glitter this much when the diamonds that should provide this glitter come from, Karas, and Karas is as dead as ever, you see? So that's what we want to address, and that's what we're addressing in our manifesto, through the manifesto. And of course, bringing, as I said, the rural economy at the center of our development agenda, where we take development to the people and therefore address the question of rural-urban migration. Because when people come to urban centers in the hope of finding jobs, all they do is actually just reproduce or transplant the rural life into urban life, and what you see is a plethora or or mushrooming of the same type of housing structures that you find in rural Namibia, that's what you find now in all urban centers. That's not helpful.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So, for example, here you are proposing that any mining industry in the country, or I suppose any mining activity in the country must have at least a 51% shareholding by Namibians through government or Namibians, I suppose. The argument has always been that the indigenization of industries like that, to the extent that I think on paper it sounds very, very good. The practicalities are the ones that seem to be an issue. People are saying if an investor has to seed so much, and Kaaronda, a Namibian who wants to be part of that scheme, doesn't have the required capital, he just wants to be brought on board, then on top of that you must still pay royalties, you must still pay taxes. How is that sensible to an investor? Some would argue.
That's true. It's a genuine concern, except, you see, our proposal is that don't go out and look for investors to bring their money. Okay, it shouldn't be the exclusive thing that we do. Bring an investor because he or she has special skills or certain skill sets that we need in the exploitation of those resources. Number two, bring the investor because he or she has the technology required. Okay, and number three, let us also use the resources, our own money, to help develop or exploit our own resources, but using other people's skills, expertise, and technologies. That's the best way of doing it.
Yeah.
But the moment you go out of the world and you say, or ask people to come and bring their money here, then of course those considerations will have to be factored into the deals that we have or that we want to strike. And that's why we feel that Namibia, being a net capital exporter, does not need foreign money to stimulate or to start its own industrial process. And the reason why we have failed, and we've been failing for the past 34 years, to attract investors, it lies in that nobody wants to come and invest money in a place that itself exports money. I mean, what's the point, you see? So that's one approach. The other approach, of course, is that government, for instance, and I would agree with anybody who would say, but government having shares in these outfits, if we are to go by the experience that we've had up until now, hasn't helped a lot. It hasn't helped alleviate poverty and so on. And that's why we feel, well, government can have a certain percentage of shares, but another percentage of shares, and we're proposing there that at least 10% of the shares must go to the employees of those companies. And they don't have to put up any capital or any money for that, because they can use the natural resources as leverage, you see. And Namibia also must learn to industrialize at a pace that is affordable and sustainable to Namibia. Not talk about green hydrogen today and then tomorrow you talk about gas, tomorrow you talk about oil. You can tell that there is no strategy, there is no process. It's all haphazard, you see, and that creates conditions where we don't take advantage of what we have or benefit from what we have. So when we focus on mining, let's focus on mining, let's beneficiate, let's conclude that, like Botswana did. Let's perfect that and then move on to the next thing. Namibia does not need green hydrogen. So who are we doing it for? And how harmful is that to us? You see, so why can't we leave that out and focus on things that we can manage with the resources that we have, and not overstretch ourselves and thinly spread ourselves on the ground in some race to perhaps be seen to be busy or doing something, because nothing seems to be working up until now.
Yes. Absolutely. We go for a short break and return with Evilastus Kaaronda. Welcome back. We are talking to Evilastus Kaaronda, President of Swanu of Namibia. Now, with all these good ideas, Mr. Kaaronda, the headlines this morning were mixed. Some actually said that you are the man to deliver the party to its final destination, which is supposedly the grave, and you told them to go to hell in the Namibian today, if you are quoted correctly. The prophets of doom are saying that you will deliver the death of the party.
Yeah, the armchair analyst. And, you see, I mean, it's surprising that, I mean, you just launched the manifesto, and then 2 minutes after, a journalist calls you and says, oh, well, the analysts seem to be saying, you guys are knocking on death's door, right? Such pessimism is really bad for politics. We should have more faith, you know. Nobody develops a manifesto without having done a bit of grassroots mobilization and checking. And that's why I was a bit taken aback by the analysis. You see,
what is your reading of what is your reading on, as the man with an eye on the ground, with actually more, you have more information than even myself and those analysts. What is the picture that you're seeing on the ground as far as the survival of your party is concerned? It's the oldest party in the country.
Yes. There are certain mistakes that the former leaders made, which resulted directly in the many electoral misfortunes that Swanu had, endured. And that's what we had set out to address. Now, you see, SWAPO survived all this while because of workers, its relationship or close proximity to workers. Swanu, in its constitution, declares that its ultimate aim is workers' power. It says that it is to forge an alliance with the working class. Now, that to me means that Swanu must find a way to get closer to the workers. Now, all leaders, the so-called academics, the educated fellows who have led Swanu before, considered workers as the uneducated, many, the useless, and so on. And that's why they couldn't galvanize enough support from among that group. Now, I feel personally that having gone through the country and having at least, campaign, we've been campaigning, it's just that we've been doing it quietly, because we are afraid also if people find out, they would go to the places that we have gone to and disrupt our activities and, take away people again. Yeah. We don't have the resources to be all over the place all the time. So, but the mood of the people is one, in my view, very suggestive of the fact that they are tired of SWAPO as a ruling party. They want a credible alternative. Now, I've looked at myself and I've always asked, you see, Memene Tumbo has always been there, a minister, cabinet, minister. My good doctor, Itula he's not a young boy. I mean, he's also been around. McHenry and others, they have been there too, right? But I have not seen any of these comrades or these, patriots at the forefront of anything really. I mean, I can give you the example of the 3,000 plus workers that I led at Ramatex during the strike that was there, that ended the exploitation that these Malaysians brought to this country. I mean, when any of them were there, what did they do? Where were they? Even Memendaitwa was there. What did she do? The same is true for the teacher strike that I led, an illegal teacher strike, by the way, because government had, for some reason, decided not to give teachers any salary increment, the public servants. And because of that strike, we forced government's hand to increase, not just the teacher salary, but all civil servants in the country. Memendaitwa was there. What did she do? Itula was there. What have they done? The strike that I was accused of having initiated of the fishermen, the seagoing employees, just to fight against the injustices that were taking place there, is a fight that has brought out a lot of issues that some of which we managed to resolve and others of which are still in need of resolution. So we've done a lot in that space to try and reflect that we care for the people, and I think I've proven that over time, whether through my NANSO years or through my trade union, years. So as far as that is concerned, we consider ourselves as a political party that is better positioned to give anyone in the race a stiff competition or a stiff race, a good race for their money. You see, so the mood on the ground has been very, positive. We've grown. I mean, last night alone, we were able to recruit. But unlike other political parties, we will not sign up members and splash them all over the news and say, this is, we have recruited so many and others have resigned from which party. Maybe psychologically it's a good thing to do, but I feel it's better we are doing this thing the way we've done it, and hopefully it will pay off. I don't see a reason why it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then coupled with this morning's headlines is also the issue about, that I alluded to in my intro, about a group within Swanu that has organized an extraordinary congress to vote for someone that to be in a position that you say you occupy. And this has been going on for so long. Court processes were exhausted. Now things are still going on. What exactly is your position on some of these issues?
You see, a lot of the colleagues or comrades who are involved in this thing have developed two problems. One, they feel they're entitled to Swanu. They feel they should be the ones in charge of it. If they're not in charge of it, then they must disrupt it. The second problem is one of nostalgia, where comrades feel that they have been here, they have been with the party in exile, whether Dukwe, or wherever it is that they were in exile, and they want to continue to associate with the party, but only to the extent that it reflects, or at least furthers, that nostalgia. And that's a problem. You can't have that. And I think that then creates the problem where comrades just stand up and do things without following any procedure, just the basic constitutional requirements. If you call an extraordinary Central Committee or Congress, the basic thing you should do is inform the office. Now, the leadership that you want to replace is in office. The leadership that you want to replace as a political bureau, they are members of the same organ, or organs, whether Central Committee or Congress. And if you leave them out, what exactly are you doing? What are you saying? And some of the people at the forefront of this thing are former, leaders of the party, and quite clearly, given the way in which they have handled party matters or affairs in the past, they still feel they can do the same thing, where you just go out and gather a few comrades, a few of your friends, give them beer and give them meat, start chanting songs and slogans and constitute yourself as a group, and then take decisions believing that those decisions will be binding on the party. You see, you cannot do the same thing that you've done in 2021, for which the court found that it was unlawful and unconstitutional. You just do the same thing, you see. So it's not going to change anything. What we will do, of course, the Politburo always has, Tuesdays, its meetings. We'll definitely look at this. We will take disciplinary action against some of those comrades that we feel have been at the forefront of this thing. Because I don't see the comrades putting down a program that says, guys, you have done this, we want to be part of this, or we feel that you are wrong in what you're doing, and therefore let's talk, or whatever it is. And it's a pity that some of the comrades have really, in the past, contributed immensely, positively, to the development of the party, and one appreciates that. But there comes a time in a party's life where you say, you've done your best, you've done your part, you've contributed. Let other people take this thing forward. Let other people grow it. Sit back, right, and see the party grow. Don't disrupt it, because clearly the intention of the comrades is to disrupt, is to sabotage. I don't see there being anything good coming out of what they've done over the weekend. We launched the manifesto in Gobabis. The least they could have done is to join in launching the manifesto and move on with their fights some other time. But now, as you said, some of the headlines in the newspapers have also clouded a very positive development for the party. So I'm not too sure now in whose interest these colleagues, work, but it's clearly not in the interest of Swanu.
I hear you.
Yeah.
The last question, briefly, because we've run out of time, Mr. Kaaronda, is just those up and downs. I mean, for a party that has one single seat in Parliament, and surely you want to grow that base in Parliament and spread your ideas, because if you have 2, 3, 4 members in Parliament, your socialist ideas that, if you still hold by those ideas as a party, can really be feathered more strongly than a lone voice that you have now.
True.
Do you think these things could actually undo those aspirations?
They are definitely not very helpful, I must say that. But what we have been able to do on the ground has not, at least not until now, or thus far, we have not seen any evidence suggesting that what these comrades have done has had any effect or impact on our people on the ground, and that to me is a positive thing. So I don't think this will undo that, and I must also state that we believe that Swanu does not need to be in government for it to deliver on some of its key programs. With a few seats in the National Assembly or Parliament in both houses, Swanu will be able to deliver on some of the programs that we feel are important to our people. And that's why it's important that people go out and give whatever support they can to Swanu, regardless of what political parties they belong to. It's just this time to give us their vote and still remain with their parties. And see how far we can take the country forward, because that's what we need right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is Evilastus Kaaronda. He is president of the Swanu Party of Namibia, which launched its manifesto over the weekend. You must make time and read through it and see if there are things that speak to your aspirations as citizens. Thank you for watching.